Hi, I'm Amy Parsons, president of Colorado State University and host of the Next 150 podcast. We have so many remarkable people in our community, and this is where we're going to hear their stories. We're going to get their perspectives on CSU's next 150 years and gather their very best advice for today's CSU students. Let's get started, Rams. Today, we're honored to have with us U.S. Senator from Colorado, Cory Gardner. Welcome to the Next 150 podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. Great to be back at CSU.
Absolutely. You know, Cory, I followed your career for a long time. First and foremost,
I hope
you
didn't
are
look
a Ram.
at my grades. You didn't look at my grades, did you?
Not yet.
Okay, good. Thanks.
But I have access to them, I think. So you are a CSU Ram, proud alum, as am I. I think that we overlapped in our years here at CSU, actually. In fact, I think we overlapped in our years also in law school. Right. We don't need to talk about that today. But
and if I had to take a couple years over again, we probably would have overlapped less, or more. I'm not sure.
That's exactly right. But we're proud of you. We're proud that you're a CSU Ram and excited to have you back on campus today. As a fifth-generation Coloradan from Yuma, you've done so much to support Colorado over the course of your career and your life. You started in the Colorado State House of Representatives, where you championed common sense fiscal policy, creative transportation solutions. Then you were elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, where your efforts focused on renewable and traditional energy, technology, cybersecurity, rural economics, healthcare, government reform and accountability, and protecting our nation's resources. After 2 successful terms in the House, you were elected to United States Senate, where you served on many committees and were consistently ranked the most effective member of the Colorado congressional delegation, and were perennially in the top 10 most bipartisan senators. That's a major accomplishment. And now you're working with a number of businesses, candidates, political organizations on important issues around the globe. So there's so much ground for us to explore today. Excited to get started. Let's start with something fun for our first question.
You bet.
Will you choose a chip from our little bowl here and tell me what number you have?
This is the chip right here. All right.
Yep.
She's a good one. Isn't Chip the name of the buffalo?
We're not talking about
I was
that,
going to say,
Cory.
this is the ramble here. Okay, all right. Here we go.
What number you got?
Number 5.
Okay. Who was your favorite professor at CSU, and what was your favorite class?
Oh man, this is a trick question. I mean, because this is a tough one.
You can either go with your favorite professor or your favorite class, whichever way you want to go.
All right, so I mean, obviously, John Strayer was an incredible professor and influence, and
absolutely.
Every Tuesday, Thursday, we'd go down to the state capitol when I was in the legislature. And John, there's an interesting story here because Dr. Strayer. I actually did not get assigned to the state representative that I initially wanted. And Dr. Strayer assigned me to this Western Slope legislator that I didn't know, and I'm an Eastern Plains guy, and so I'm like, well, what does this have in common with what I was trying to do? And you know what? It was amazing because who he ended up putting me with was a guy named Russell George, who went on to become Speaker of the House, a mentor of mine. And I think he just thought the person that I had originally wanted to be with wasn't going to be as dynamic and sort of forward moving as Russ George ended up being, and he saw that. And so credit to Dr. Strayer for that. You know, Dr. Lawrence was a professor of mine. The security class was incredible.
Well. Yes, I had that class too.
There was a Professor Lamborn who was
Alan
Lamborn took national security foreign policy from. And then I took one of my favorite courses, though, believe it or not, was a U.S. space policy class. I think Dr. Lester taught that class, and it was so you know, a lot of those things I worked on over the last 20 years got my very first start at CSU.
That's amazing. Yeah, those are great stories. And just to keep with the theme of Dr. Strayer, but that's kind of what we're talking about right now is what type of experiences can we offer to our current CSU students that will spark that idea in their minds about perhaps running for office sometime in their future, but also just thinking about things in different ways, working with representatives, senators that they might not otherwise work with and learn from them.
Well, and it's so fun too because not only was it an experience with Russ George and Dr. Strayer and the class, but so many of the people that we worked with at the state capitol from other schools are people that I am very good friends with today, served as a staff member in the Senate with, people like Frank McNulty, Josh Penry, and others that we were all down at the state capitol at the same time. Little did we know, 20 years later, we'd still be working in the same public policy areas. as we are today. Yeah.
Did you know coming into CSU that you wanted to run for office someday?
I thought I was going to be a tractor salesman. I wanted to go back and take. You may not remember this because I'm kind of old now. But this whole
We're the same, remember.
I'm trying to. Remember that movie? It was a TV show about Ed, and he was a lawyer, and he owned a bowling alley, and he'd like practice law out of the bowling alley. I think it was Ed. It could have been Jerry. I don't know, but it was something. It's like that. I thought I would be the Ed of tractor dealerships, where I would have my law degree, I'd go home, I'd work at the implement dealership and help somebody out with contracts, or in Eastern Colorado, a lot of wills and estates, that kind of thing. Just be able to do that and be a part of the family business. And it went drastically wrong.
Oh, there's still time, though.
No, there's
still time.
We sold the business,
maybe
though.
That's
We
what's
sold
in your
the
future.
dealership. I could maybe go back, find a new one. That's right.
What drew you to come to CSU in the first place?
It's funny. I didn't go to CSU in the first place. I've told you the story, I think, that I actually went to CU my first year undergrad. And I ended up not having a good experience. And maybe it was just me, the little kid, little town kid going to the big city, ended up transferring to CSU after that first year and loved it here. Ended up in farmhouse, was a ram handler, got involved in anything and everything I could here, and just had an incredible experience.
I love that you were a ram handler, and I recently was at a farmhouse breakfast during the National Western Stock Show where they brought in their alums, and it's
I am not qualified to be a ram handler today. I think you have requirements, grades, you got to interview. No, I don't think I could have made the cut back then.
It's serious business, but I love that you did that.
But my parents went here too. And so, part of the reason I didn't come here is I don't want to follow. I want to be my own, and realized that, no, I think CSU is a better fit. Yeah.
Well, we're grateful that you made that decision and ultimately graduated from CSU. And now today, fast forward, you and I are sitting in here having this conversation about CSU. And part of what you're doing here today is helping us with our thematic year of democracy. We are focused on democracy at CSU right now. And part of that, Cory, I think, as a land-grant institution, that's our roots, that's our mission, to really focus on democracy and how we can be an incubator for a strong democracy, bringing students in from all different backgrounds, walks of life, helping them to really have strong democratic muscles when they graduate from CSU, ready to engage, ready to be great citizens, to vote, maybe to run for office like you are someday. And you're a Republican who's really earned a reputation for working productively with people of all different backgrounds working across the aisle. Share with us some strategies that you've developed over the years, or that you deploy when you're working with somebody who comes at an issue from a very different place. Yeah,
there's a couple ways that I think you could address this question. But I'm always reminded of something that Lamar Alexander said. Senator Alexander, sort of a crown jewel of public service in this country, from the state of Tennessee. He once said about serving in the Senate, he said, "It's awful hard to get here. It's awful hard to stay here. So while we're here, we might as well get some good things done." And if you take that and you apply it to anything you're doing in your life, maybe it's your work, maybe it's your home, maybe it's your passion, whatever your passion is, that same philosophy ought to apply, because it's not easy running a business. It's not easy running a family. And if you say, hey, it's hard to do this, it's hard to stay in the game, but if I'm going to do it, then let's do it the best that I can. And I think that's the fundamental approach that I take to everything. I remember as a freshman House of Representatives member in Congress, in the U.S. Congress, and I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. There's this guy named Ed Markey from Massachusetts, who's a very high-ranking senior member of the Democrat side of the aisle. And this guy, I thought, was just out of his mind. I disagreed with him on almost everything he said. I was annoyed when he would get to ask questions, because he would take all 5 minutes doing something that I completely disagreed with. And then he gets appointed to the Senate, a series of vacancy, now elected outright. And then I end up in the Senate, and we ended up serving together. He was my ranking member on the Foreign Relations Committee. And I tell you, to this day, I adore and love Ed Markey. I disagree with him on a lot. He disagrees with me on a lot. But on those areas where we agree and where we work to find that agreement, we have done amazing things. The Asia Reassurance Initiative Act, other legislation that we have been able to find common ground on to enact, implement, and empower the United States from a global leadership perspective. That happened because we built a relationship of trust, of respect. And that example goes from something that I heard somebody else say in politics, that it's hard to hate up close. When you get to know somebody, when you get to hear them talk, maybe you're still going to disagree with them. Maybe there's not a lot that you actually will share in common. But you also respect their their desire to serve because they're coming at it from that same principle of it's hard to get here, it's hard to stay here, let's do some good work while we're here. And if you come at every relationship with that same sort of attitude, good things are going to happen because you're not trying to put your will in their place. You're actually trying to have the will to have the place work.
That's amazing perspective. It takes two,
Yeah.
right? It takes you both coming in with that that goal of having that
That's right.
trust and those open ears of listening to each other. I think especially the U.S. Senate has always supposed to be seen as this place where that can happen,
Yeah.
where we're electing the country's best and brightest to have those difficult conversations and make progress. Do you feel like it is functioning that way today, or
Yeah.
or is it more functioning to exacerbate the polarization?
Right. You know, it's always easy to look back and say, man, it was a lot better when I was there, or it was a lot better 20 years ago or 30 years ago. We used to tar and feather people for their political views. We had duels in our real live duels in our politics. We used to think that other humans could own other humans. These are all things that we have realized were wrong, terrifically wrong, and we have overcome them. And so when it comes to the Senate, our founders did a very brilliant thing. They said, only through coming together are you going to be able to get something done in the Senate. Maybe it wasn't in the lens of a Republican or Democrat back in 1789, but it certainly is today. It's going to take somebody who's on the left and the right to get something done. And there's ups and downs, ebbs and flows to how our legislative bodies respond. They are a reflection of the American people. And when the American people take it into their own hands that enough is enough, that's when the change will occur. And so I think that's where we have to realize that Congress can do a better job. Our citizens' engagement can be more resolved to get the results that they're hoping for. But certainly, it is not, things aren't, you turn on the TV today and it's not exactly rosy what we see.
Right.
But I am confident this country will get through it.
And I think that to turn that tide, it takes today's young people, it takes today's
Yes.
young adults being
Yes.
committed. If you're playing the long game, like no big movement ever happens without the engagement of the youth. One thing that I worry about as our students here today at CSU see how polarized it is and how ugly it can get in politics, and they'll be turned away from politics in general. They'll be turned away from those discussions, turned away from running for office.
Right.
So I'm interested in your advice to students today who might think, I would love to be in that profession. I'd love to run for office, but I don't know if I want to be a part of that right now.
There's this sort of generational look back and look forward, right? I guess when you're young, you have this generational look forward and you say, man, these people are ruining everything. Why would I want to be a part of that? And you have this look back from older generations who are saying, man, look at these kids today. It's nothing but TikTok and whatever. And they're both wrong.
Right.
About this. And how do I know this? I had this incredible opportunity in the Senate to be a part of the Academy nomination forums where I would pick community members, leaders in business, leaders in the community to help nominate students coming out of high school to the service academies. And to a person, every single one of them would come back to me after they interview these high school kids and say, Cory, no matter what happens, our country's in great hands. These people are brilliant.
Yep.
And so I think that gives me confidence that the older generation knows that the backfilling by the next generation is going to be okay. The kids are okay.
Yeah.
And that the people who are looking at the older generation, you know what, they're going to find ways to make it work with them as well. What I hope people will do is know that the only way we move forward in this country is by people of goodwill who will step in and say, you know what, it's my turn. I remember I live in a very small town to this day, grew up in a small town, lived there today, and there were certain families that you could always depend on who were going to get the job done, who'd raise the money for the local baseball team or raise the money for the local high school to build a new building or the hospital for a new facility. And it wasn't too long ago that I realized that older person is now my generation, that we can't look to somebody else and say, well, the Smiths will take care of it or the Joneses will take care of it. Guess what? We're them now,
That's
right?
us, right?
And so we have to make sure that the students who graduate this year from Colorado State University know their country needs them, their community needs them, their families need them, and they're going to be amazing leaders. But don't be afraid to do it.
I think you're absolutely right on that. And you're being very generous with your time with us today. You'll be with some of our students later today, some of our students who have already run for office, who are ASCSU leaders. And I think that's another great thing about being at a big public university like this. There's so many opportunities to try it out, whether you're trying out running for office in your fraternity.
And I'm proof that you can lose an ASCSU election and then go on and win before you lose, but it's all right.
You're just exercising it, right?
That's right.
Just warming it up. And so to see all the students sort of, testing out their leadership capabilities here at CSU, I think is really valuable. And I think when you see our student leaders today, you'll also feel like we are in really good shape when you see them, because they are very engaged. And what's interesting too, and one of the reasons that we're so focused on democracy right now, we're coming into a presidential election cycle. We'll have, this next November, a major election.
Right.
And what we sometimes forget is that for thousands and thousands and thousands of our students, it's their first election ever.
Right, yeah.
It's the first time they're registering
Exciting
to vote.
time, yeah.
It's their first time that they're voting. It's their first time they're seeing candidates on campus. So talk to me a little bit about that, what we can do, what I can do to foster that environment on campus in the fall around the election so that students feel energized to engage and that it's okay to debate and dialogue with one another.
I think, making it fun, making it about the future of this country. Our politics is about the future, right? And I think that's what those people who can find success in public service know, that everything they do is about the future. And so engaging the students in that future conversation is exciting. And, maybe it is about having a debate here on campus. Maybe it's student organizations holding their own debate where they'll choose an issue and they'll debate from that candidate or that position's side and hear each other out. Look, there's a great podcast that Governor Bill Haslam in Tennessee is hosting with a former Democrat governor in Tennessee, and I think it's called something like you just might be right, or something like that. You might be right, and it's about finding ways to engage politically, about that excitement of the future, knowing that, hey, maybe I've got it wrong, or maybe you've got it wrong, but together we can talk, we can argue, we can debate civilly, and find the best way forward. And that's what is here. So get engaged. Plenty of time for candidates to come in and around, whether it's local office, state office, federal office. And I encourage students to get out there to do it, to see it, be a part of it. I remember it was 1994. I think it was Hillary Clinton who came to Colorado when I was a student. And I remember going to see Hillary Clinton at a campus event.
What I encourage the students to do is to go to the event where the speaker you think you're going to disagree with. Don't just go to the ones where you know that you're going to agree with.
Yeah.
Choose the ones where you're pretty sure you don't agree.
Yeah.
Go to those. Not necessarily to change your mind, although it's okay to change your mind.
Right.
Right?
It is, and confirmation bias that we have today, where I just want to read, see, hang out with people that I know treat issues exactly the same as me. We got to make sure that we're hearing all points of view too, from others who may disagree.
Yeah, and that's another value, I think, of being at a campus like this, is that they are living with people who come from different backgrounds. They're sitting in the classroom with different people, listening to different perspectives, hopefully going to see speakers that they disagree with, so they grow in their own understanding, right? But I think we also have to model for them that it is okay to change your mind.
It is, that's right. Just like I changed my mind on Ed Markey. And I am better for it, and I think the country has been better for it because of that relationship that we were able to build. And maybe it's an issue, maybe it's a personality, but we have to be able to change our minds, to learn more things, to be okay with it, and to know that it's not something that's a point of weakness, but is actually that shows the resolve and the strength of our nation.
Yeah, we had political scientist Robert Putnam on campus recently, and he showed these graphs about just how polarized the country is today, not just politically, but socially, in terms of people not going out to dinner with people of the opposing party, of not having interesting conversations with people.
It's become a real dating problem for Republicans. I've heard. I've seen in the polling.
He actually brought that up of people who will not date the other party, and we've got to correct that trend, right, and bring people back together. And I really feel like places like this are fundamental to be able to curve that polarization back to a more manageable place, because the majority of Americans, I think, are worried about the polarization that we see today.
They are.
And worry that we are not capable of making the best decisions and progress for the country given the state of polarization.
No, completely agree. And I think, it's something that I call the pillar in the paint. And maybe I've gotten into this with you before or not, but, if it's a pillar, if it's a pillar that's necessary for the architectural strength of the building, you can't move that pillar. But if it's a paint problem, You disagree with somebody on this or that or the other. Can we paint it green? Can we paint it yellow? Can we paint it gold? We'd never paint it black and gold. But I think, that's something that we can, for those of you who don't know, that's my University of Colorado dig for the day. I'll just make one, that's it. But I think the opportunity is to say, hey, look, I'm never going to ask you to be a different person, to fundamentally change the things. But maybe there's ways that we can get around what you and I are disagreeing with, and that's the color of the paint. Figure out how to say, look, I'm not going to ask you to tear down the building, but let's figure out how we can make it something that we all enjoy in spite of that.
That's a good analogy. I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, if somebody agrees with you 80% of the time, it doesn't make him 20% a traitor.
Right.
Work with that 80% of where you disagree, and I think that there's a lot more agreement between us than disagreement.
There is, and that's where it goes back to, we have to have an electorate who appreciates that, right? And I think they do. We just need to make sure that they show it.
Yeah. Well, students are our top priority at Colorado State University. Getting students into CSU, getting them through, graduated, successful, going on to have fabulous careers such that you've had. I just want to end with you maybe talking about advice for CSU students, whether politics or not, as they're starting their journey here at Colorado State University.
I think, figure out how to get to yes, right? On the wall in my office, you will find a mission statement. When I was in the Senate, it was in every office. And it basically said something like this, that we need to start from a position of yes, and then work like heck to find the right solution when somebody comes to you with a major issue. Now, maybe you're going to completely disagree with them. Maybe it's something that's impossible to achieve. But if you start from that position of, by gosh, we're going to get it done, then you can. Right? And then you'll find a way. And even if you don't actually get exactly what they wanted you to do, you've come a long ways to try to solve at least the biggest part of it. And so my advice is this. If there's an opportunity, take it. I had no idea that I'd end up at an internship with the Ag Trade Association in Washington, D.C. I thought I'd be at the implement dealership practicing law. And that changed everything. And why did it change everything? Because I said yes. And so let's figure out how to take an opportunity, pursue it, and then figure out how to work with our relationships so that we can actually say, hey, you know what? There's something there that if I pursue it, who knows what comes next? But I want people to know that this truly is, and it remains, despite all the difficulties and clouds that we may see, the land of opportunity that we have to continue to empower to be that for the next generation.
I fully agree. That's great advice. Rams, hopefully you all listen to that. Rams are people who get it done.
That's right.
And I think we'll create that land of opportunity going forward. So, Senator Cory Gardner, thank you so much.
Thanks for having
being
me
on the podcast today. It's great
Go
to have
Rams.
you back at CSU. Yep, go Rams. Thanks very much. Thank you for listening. I'm Amy Parsons, president of Colorado State University, and you're listening to CSU's The Next 150, where we explore what comes next for CSU by chatting with change makers who are already leading the charge and shaping our next 150 years. I'm gathering their very best advice for today's CSU students. Stay tuned to wherever you get podcasts for our next outstanding conversation. Go Rams!